My husband's brother sent a fancy Parisian cake with a note. Happy birthday, gorgeous. Indulge. 2 hours later he called, did you enjoy it? I laughed and said, your wife dropped by that morning, and ate the whole thing. He went silent. The next thing I heard was him screaming through the phone. The screams from my phone were so visceral that I nearly dropped it. Dylan's voice, usually so controlled and smug, had transformed into something primal, something terrified. In that moment, as his panicked shrieks echoed through my kitchen, 7 years of tension crystallized into perfect clarity. The beautiful Parisian cake he'd sent wasn't a peace offering. It wasn't even a flirtation. It was a murder attempt. But I should start at the beginning. I met Dylan 3 months before I met Logan. We crossed paths at a charity fundraiser in downtown Boston where I was volunteering. Dylan was charming, confident, borderline arrogant. The kind of man who entered rooms expecting them to bend around him. When he asked for my number, I gave it without much thought. Our first date was pleasant enough, but something felt performative about his attention, as if he was following a script rather than connecting with me. 2 dates later, he invited me to dinner at his family home, eager to introduce me to his parents. It felt rushed, his intensity slightly unsettling. That night changed everything, though not how Dylan had planned. His younger brother Logan walked in late, apologizing for missing dinner. Where Dylan was all polished edges and calculated charm, Logan was genuine warmth and quiet confidence. Our eyes met across the dining room and something shifted in my universe. Charlotte was just telling us about her work with the Literacy Foundation, Dylan said, his hand possessively finding my shoulder. Logan smiled, that crooked, sincere smile I'd come to treasure. That's incredible. My 3rd-grade teacher volunteered there. Changed my life. It was such a simple exchange, but I felt seen in a way Dylan had never managed in our brief time together. By dessert, I knew I was in trouble. Over the next few weeks, I tried to let Dylan down gently, explaining that the chemistry wasn't there. His expression hardened in a way that should have warned me. It's Logan, isn't it? He asked, his voice dangerously quiet. I didn't answer, which was answer enough. 4 months later, Logan and I were inseparable, navigating the complicated waters of falling in love while trying to respect Dylan's feelings. Logan agonized over the situation. He's my brother, Char. I never meant to. He'd say, unable to finish the thought. I understood. Family loyalty ran deep for the Mitchell brothers despite their differences. Dylan maintained a glacial politeness whenever we crossed paths, but his eyes followed me with an intensity that raised goosebumps on my skin. His mother once caught me noticing this and squeezed my hand. He'll move past it, dear, she whispered. Dylan's always wanted what Logan has. Since they were boys. When Logan proposed a year later, it felt right despite the complications. Dylan's congratulations came through gritted teeth, his hug too tight, too long. At our engagement dinner, he raised a toast that felt more like a warning. To my brother, who always seems to find exactly what I'm looking for. The wedding preparations became a minefield of Dylan's subtle sabotage. Venue recommendations that mysteriously fell through, a misplaced deposit, Logan's tuxedo order that somehow got cancelled. Nothing could be directly attributed to him, yet Logan and I both knew. The morning of our wedding, I found a note slipped under my dressing room door. You're making a mistake. It should have been me. I burned it before anyone could see, determined not to let Dylan taint our day. During the ceremony, I caught Dylan watching me with naked longing as I walked down the aisle. When the minister asked if anyone objected, my heart froze for 3 eternal seconds before the moment passed. At the reception, Dylan delivered a best man speech so double-edged that guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure whether to laugh or wince. I knew Charlotte first, he reminded everyone, swirling champagne in his glass. Sometimes the universe has a twisted sense of humor about who ends up with whom. He finished with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. 2 months after our honeymoon, Dylan announced he was engaged to Amelia, a quiet pharmaceutical researcher he'd known for all of 3 weeks. Logan was stunned. That's sudden, he managed when Dylan broke the news at Sunday dinner. Dylan shrugged, his arm draped possessively around Amelia's shoulders. When you know, you know. Right, Charlotte? His eyes challenged me across the table. Amelia seemed nice enough, intelligent, reserved, clearly besotted with Dylan. I tried to warn her once, carefully. Dylan moves quickly when he wants something. I said during a kitchen moment alone. She misunderstood my concern as jealousy. He told me about your history, she replied, her voice soft but certain. But he's moved on. We both have. The pity in her eyes made my stomach twist. I realized then what version of our story Dylan had told her. Their wedding was small, rushed, as if Dylan couldn't bear to give anyone time to question his decision. During their first dance, his eyes found mine over Amelia's shoulder, his expression saying what words couldn't. This could have been us. The years that followed settled into an uneasy pattern. Holiday gatherings, birthday celebrations, family vacations, each occasion a fresh opportunity for Dylan to remind me of what might have been. A brush of fingers when passing the salt. Knowing glances while others were distracted. Comments with hidden meanings only I would catch. Remember that Italian place on Newberry Street, Charlotte? Best carbonara in the city. He'd say casually, referencing our second date while his wife and brother sat oblivious beside us. At Logan's birthday last year, I found Dylan alone in the kitchen, staring at a photograph of Logan and me on the refrigerator. He doesn't deserve you, he murmured, not turning around. He never did. I'd learned to navigate these moments with practiced grace, maintaining distance without creating scenes. Logan knew something remained unresolved with his brother but could never quite grasp its depth. Dylan's always been intense, he'd say, especially around you. If only he knew how that intensity had calcified into something darker over the years. How Dylan's gaze had transformed from wanting to something that felt increasingly like hatred. How his compliments had evolved into veiled criticisms designed to undermine my confidence, my marriage, my sense of safety. When Logan left for his business trip last week, I caught Dylan watching our house from his car, parked down the street. He drove away when I noticed him, but the message was clear. He was waiting for an opportunity. I just never imagined that opportunity would come in the form of a beautiful Parisian cake, its elegant box tied with a satin ribbon, delivered on my birthday morning with a card that read, "Happy birthday, gorgeous. Indulge." The cake that now, as Dylan's screams filled my kitchen, I realized had never been meant as a gift but as a weapon. I stood in my kitchen, fingers tracing the edge of Dylan's note as morning light spilled across the marble countertop. The cake had arrived just after 7, an unreasonably early delivery that had pulled me from sleep. The doorbell's chime had sent my heart racing, momentarily hoping Logan had somehow managed to return early from his Chicago conference to surprise me for my birthday. Instead, a courier in crisp uniform had presented me with an elegant white box tied with navy satin ribbon. "Special delivery for Mrs. Mitchell," he'd announced with practiced cheer. The return address was from La Pâtisserie du Jardin, an exclusive French bakery that had recently opened a location in Boston's upscale Beacon Hill neighborhood. I'd mentioned wanting to try it during a family dinner months ago, a casual comment I never expected anyone to remember, especially not Dylan. Now, alone in my bathrobe, I carefully untied the ribbon. The box itself was a work of art, thick cream cardstock embossed with gold filigree. Inside, nestled in delicate tissue paper, sat what could only be described as an edible masterpiece. The cake was small but exquisite, a glossy dark chocolate glaze cascading over layers visible from the side. Vanilla bean, raspberry, chocolate mousse, and what looked like champagne-infused cream. Decorative gold leaf adorned the top alongside fresh berries dusted with what might have been edible shimmer. It was the kind of dessert that belonged in a magazine spread. The kind that cost more than most people spent on a week of groceries. I set the card on the counter, Dylan's familiar handwriting making my stomach tighten. "Happy birthday, gorgeous. Indulge." Nothing more. No signature. As if I wouldn't know exactly who it was from. My phone buzzed with birthday wishes from friends, but Logan's morning call was conspicuously absent. The conference had him booked solid, presentations from dawn until dinner, followed by networking events he couldn't escape. "I'll make it up to you next weekend," he'd promised before leaving. "We'll celebrate properly, just the two of us." I'd kissed him goodbye 3 days ago, trying not to show my disappointment. Now I stood alone with a cake from the last person who should be sending me birthday gifts. I snapped a photo of the creation before retrieving a fork from the drawer. Despite my unease, curiosity won out. I leaned forward to take a small taste from the edge. Something stopped me. A faint scent beneath the rich chocolate and berries. Something almost medicinal. I set the fork down, suddenly cold despite the warm May morning filtering through the kitchen windows. This wasn't the first inappropriate gesture from Dylan over the years, but something felt different. The timing with Logan away. The extravagance. The presumptuous note. I slid the cake back into its box and washed my hands, as if even touching it had somehow contaminated me. As I dried my fingers on a kitchen towel, my gaze drifted to the photos magnetized to our refrigerator. Logan and me hiking in Vermont, laughing at his parents' anniversary party, huddled together last Christmas morning. Happy, normal. Everything Dylan seemed determined to disrupt. The kitchen clock read 8:17 a.m. when another knock at the door jolted me from my thoughts. Tightening my robe, I peered through the peephole to find Amelia standing on my porch, shifting awkwardly from foot to foot. Of all people. I smoothed my hair and opened the door, forcing a smile I didn't feel. Amelia. This is unexpected. She stood in crisp white jeans and a pale blue blouse, honey blonde hair pulled back in her trademark neat ponytail. Always put together, always slightly uncomfortable, like someone perpetually afraid of making a mistake. The oversized designer bag hanging from her shoulder seemed at odds with her hesitant demeanor. "I'm sorry to drop by unannounced," she said, her voice soft as always. She lifted a small gift bag. "I wanted to bring this by for your birthday. And I knew Logan was out of town, so." She trailed off, her eyes not quite meeting mine. The thoughtfulness surprised me. Amelia and I maintained polite relations but had never developed the sisterly closeness some in-laws shared. How could we, with Dylan's history hanging between us? "That's really sweet of you," I said, genuinely touched. "Please come in. I just made coffee." She followed me into the kitchen, her steps measured and careful, as if navigating unfamiliar territory. In 7 years of knowing her, I realized this was only the third time she'd been inside our home without Dylan accompanying her. "Your house always feels so lived in," she commented, setting her bag on a chair. I couldn't tell if it was a compliment or criticism compared to her and Dylan's immaculate modernist condo where nothing seemed touched, much less lived in. "Oh." Her eyes widened as she spotted the pâtisserie box on the counter. "Is that from La Pâtisserie? Dylan mentioned wanting to try it." My hand instinctively moved to cover the card, but too late, she'd already noticed it. I watched her expression carefully, searching for any sign she knew her husband had sent his sister-in-law an expensive, flirtatiously noted birthday cake while her own husband was conveniently away. Her face revealed nothing beyond mild interest. Either she was an exceptional actress, or Dylan kept his obsession carefully hidden at home. "Yes," I said carefully. "It just arrived. Would you like some coffee? Or tea?" "Coffee would be lovely," she replied, perching on a bar stool at the kitchen island. "Dylan left early this morning. Some emergency at work." She fidgeted with her wedding ring, a massive diamond that overwhelmed her slender finger. "He seemed distracted lately." I busied myself with mugs and cream, unsure how to navigate this conversation. The cake sat between us like a ticking bomb. "Happy birthday, by the way," she added, sliding the small gift bag toward me. "It's nothing special, just a scarf I thought would bring out your eyes." The genuine warmth in her voice made my chest tight with guilt. How much did she suspect? How much did she choose to ignore? As I poured coffee, Amelia's gaze kept returning to the cake. "That looks absolutely divine," she murmured. "Special occasion treat?" The words formed before I could fully consider them. "Would you like to try it?" "I haven't cut into it yet." Something, intuition, self-preservation, perhaps a guardian angel, had held me back from tasting Dylan's gift. Now I was offering it to his wife instead. Amelia's eyes lit up. "Are you sure? It looks too beautiful to eat." I retrieved a dessert plate and knife. "I insist. Logan and I are watching our sugar intake anyway." The lie came easily. "Besides, what's the point of beautiful things if they're not shared?" As I sliced into the exquisite layers, I had no idea that this simple action would change everything. That within hours, this elegant confection would reveal the darkness Dylan had harbored all these years, and that Amelia's innocent visit would save my life while endangering her own. Amelia's fork hovered over the slice I'd placed before her, her expression almost reverent. "This looks too perfect to eat," she murmured, then took a delicate bite. Her eyes closed momentarily. "Oh my goodness, Charlotte. This is incredible." I watched her carefully, a strange tightness in my chest. The morning sunlight caught the gold flecks on the cake, making them shimmer ominously. I'd poured us both coffee but left mine untouched, suddenly parched despite the full mug. "So," I began, settling across from her at the kitchen island, "how are things with you and Dylan?" Amelia's smile faltered slightly before recovering. "Good. Busy, you know. His firm is handling that big merger downtown." She took another bite, larger this time. "He works late most nights." The unspoken implication hung between us. She spent many evenings alone, waiting for a husband who prioritized everything above their marriage. I nodded sympathetically, recognizing the familiar excuse. Logan's architectural firm demanded long hours too, but he always made it home for dinner unless he was traveling. Dylan's perpetual working late had been a running family joke until it stopped being funny. "And you?" I asked gently. "Still enjoying the research lab?" Her face brightened genuinely. "We're making real progress on our Alzheimer's study. It's preliminary but promising." For a moment, I glimpsed the passionate scientist beneath the careful exterior. "Dylan thinks I should cut back my hours, though. He says." She trailed off, poking at the cake. "Says what?" "That we should be thinking about starting a family." Her voice dropped almost to a whisper. "He's suddenly very focused on it." The revelation caught me off guard. Dylan had always declared himself uninterested in fatherhood. Another uncomfortable piece that didn't fit. "How do you feel about that?" I ventured. Amelia shrugged, avoiding my gaze. "I'm not sure we're ready. Or that we're." She stopped herself. "Anyway, enough about me. How are the teaching plans coming?" I allowed the subject change, explaining my upcoming interview for a position teaching literature at a local community college. Logan had been endlessly supportive of my career transition, unlike his brother who'd once helpfully suggested I'd make more money staying in corporate marketing. As we talked, I noticed Amelia glancing repeatedly at the cake box. "It's really remarkable," she said during a lull in conversation. "Special occasion bakeries weren't really part of my childhood. My mom baked from box mixes for birthdays." The comment revealed a glimpse of the middle-class upbringing Dylan rarely acknowledged about his wife. He'd once mockingly called her scholarship girl at a family gathering, disguising the dig as affectionate teasing. Logan had confronted him afterward, one of the rare times the brothers had openly argued. "My mom was a box mix baker too," I shared, forming an unexpected connection. "We should trade stories sometime." Amelia nodded, a genuine smile warming her features. "I'd like that." The moment of harmony made what came next even more difficult. "Dylan mentioned you had dinner with his parents last weekend," I said casually, folding my napkin precisely. "We weren't invited." Her fork paused midway to her mouth. "Oh," I thought. Confusion flickered across her face. "Dylan said you and Logan couldn't make it. Something about Logan working on a project deadline." Another lie. We'd had no invitation, no mention of any family dinner. I filed this information away, keeping my expression neutral. Must have been a miscommunication. The undercurrent of tension returned, rippling beneath our polite veneer. Amelia finished her cake in uncomfortable silence, then checked her watch. "I should probably get going. I have a meeting at 11. "Of course," I said, standing to clear her plate. "Thank you again for coming by." She hesitated, then asked the question I'd been anticipating. "Would you mind if I took some of that cake home? It's just so delicious and Dylan has such a sweet tooth." The request sent a chill through me, though I couldn't have explained why. Some protective instinct made me want to throw the entire cake into the trash, but logic prevailed. What reason could I possibly give for refusing? "Absolutely," I replied, reaching for the box. "Take all of it. Logan and I really shouldn't indulge." Relief washed over her face. "Are you sure? It's your birthday cake." I secured the lid, avoiding contact with the contents. "I'm positive. Consider it my thanks for thinking of me today." Amelia accepted the box with both hands, treating it like a treasure. "Dylan will be thrilled. He mentioned this bakery just last week." Something in her innocent statement triggered an alarm bell. If Dylan had been talking about the bakery recently, the cake wasn't a spontaneous gift but a planned one. The timing, during Logan's absence, felt increasingly deliberate. As I walked her to the door, she paused on the threshold. "Charlotte, can I ask you something?" My pulse quickened. "Of course." Did you and Dylan ever? She faltered, her fingers tightening on the cake box. I mean, before you met Logan, was there ever anything between you two? The question caught me completely off guard. In 7 years, we'd maintained the polite fiction that Dylan's interest had never existed. That Amelia didn't know about our brief dating history. We went on a few casual dates, I admitted carefully. Nothing serious. It was over long before Logan and I got together. Her expression revealed nothing, but her knuckles whitened around the box. That's what I thought. Dylan gets so strange whenever your name comes up. She attempted a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. Silly of me to wonder after all these years. As Amelia walked to her car, cake in hand, a profound uneasiness settled over me. What had prompted that question now? What changes had she noticed in her husband's behavior? What wasn't she saying? I watched until her silver sedan disappeared around the corner, then locked the door and leaned against it, suddenly exhausted though the day had barely begun. The interaction had left me drained, alert to dangers I couldn't name. My instinct to avoid the cake felt increasingly justified, though I couldn't articulate why. In the kitchen, I scrubbed the dessert plate Amelia had used until my hands were raw, then poured my untouched coffee down the drain. The memory of that medicinal scent beneath the chocolate lingered, along with the image of Dylan's handwriting on the card. Indulge. I reached for my phone to call Logan, then stopped. What would I say? That his brother sent me an expensive cake that smelled strange? That I'd given it to his sister-in-law instead? That after 7 years, I was suddenly convinced Dylan harbored darker intentions than inappropriate flirtation? Instead, I texted him a simple "missing you today," and set my phone aside. As I showered and dressed for my birthday lunch with friends, I tried to dismiss my concerns as paranoia. People didn't poison birthday cakes. That happened in movies, not in suburban Boston. But as I applied my makeup, one unsettling thought persisted. Why had Dylan sent something meant to be consumed when Logan was away? And why did Amelia's innocent question about our past suddenly feel like the prelude to something ominous? My birthday lunch with friends at Harborside Bistro offered a welcome distraction from the morning's unsettling events. We laughed over mimosas, shared workplace gossip, and they teased me about turning 34. It's all downhill after 35. For 2 blissful hours, I almost forgot about the strange cake and Amelia's troubling questions. Beth and Megan insisted on splitting the check despite my protests. "Birthday girl doesn't pay," Beth declared, swiping her card before I could argue further. As we hugged goodbye in the restaurant's entryway, my phone buzzed in my purse. I fished it out, expecting Logan's promised lunchtime call. Instead, Dylan's name flashed on my screen. My stomach dropped. In 7 years of marriage to Logan, Dylan had called me directly exactly 3 times. All for unavoidable logistics regarding family gatherings. Never on my birthday. Never when Logan was out of town. "I should take this," I told my friends, forcing a smile. "Thanks again for lunch." They departed with final birthday wishes as I answered the call, stepping back into the restaurant's quiet vestibule. "Hello, Charlotte." Dylan's voice sounded unnaturally cheerful. "Happy birthday, gorgeous." The echo of his card's message sent a chill through me. "Thanks, Dylan," I replied neutrally. "That's thoughtful of you. Did you get my little surprise this morning?" His tone was playful, intimate, entirely inappropriate for speaking to his brother's wife. I leaned against the wall, suddenly needing its support. "The cake?" "Yes, it arrived." "And?" The eagerness in his voice made my skin crawl. "Did you enjoy it? I remembered how you mentioned wanting to try that bakery." A couple entered the vestibule, forcing me to step outside onto the sunny sidewalk. Traffic noise provided a strange soundtrack to this increasingly disturbing conversation. "Actually," I said, keeping my voice light, "I didn't get the chance to try it." "What?" The disappointment was palpable. "Why not?" I paused, considering my words carefully. "Amelia stopped by this morning with a birthday gift. She saw the cake and mentioned how much she loves desserts from that bakery." "Amelia came to your house?" Something shifted in his tone, concern replacing disappointment. "Yes, around 8:30. Wasn't that nice of her?" I watched pedestrians stream past, envying their normal Tuesday afternoon. Since Logan's away and I had lunch plans, I sent the cake home with her. "She seemed really excited to surprise you with it." Complete silence filled the line. Not even breathing. "Dylan?" Are you there? When he finally spoke, his voice had dropped to a whisper. Amelia took the cake? The whole thing? Yes, I confirmed, an inexplicable dread building in my chest. She said you have a sweet tooth. I figured you'd enjoy it more than. She ate it. The sudden volume made me pull the phone from my ear. I don't know if she's eaten it yet, I replied, my heart beginning to race. She took it home about 2 hours ago. What followed was the most chilling sound I've ever heard. A raw, primal scream that seemed to contain equal parts terror and rage. It echoed through my phone so loudly that a passing businessman gave me a startled look. Dylan? What's wrong? My question went unanswered as I heard crashing sounds in the background, like someone frantically moving through a room, knocking things over. What have you done? He shrieked, his voice barely recognizable. Do you have any idea? The sentence cut off abruptly. Dylan, you're scaring me. What's happening? My voice had dropped to a whisper as passing pedestrians stared. I have to go, he gasped. Don't call her. Don't call her. The line went dead. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, phone still pressed to my ear, as understanding crystallized with terrible clarity. The strange medicinal smell. Dylan's insistence that I eat it. His panic when he learned Amelia had taken it instead. The cake was poisoned. He had tried to kill me. The truth hit me with such force that I staggered, bumping into a parking meter. My mind raced through the morning's events. How close I'd come to tasting that beautiful, deadly creation. How some instinct had held me back. How I'd unwittingly given it to Amelia instead. Amelia, who had done nothing wrong except marry a monster. My fingers trembled as I scrolled to her contact and called. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. Next I tried their home number. It rang endlessly with no answer. Panic rising, I texted her. Amelia, please call me immediately. It's an emergency. 3 agonizing minutes passed. No response. I flagged down a taxi, giving the driver Dylan and Amelia's address in Brookline. As fast as you can, please. Family emergency. As the taxi wove through traffic, I called Logan, praying he could step out of his conference. Hey birthday girl, he answered, his voice a warm contrast to the horror unfolding. I was just about to. Logan, I interrupted, my voice shaking. Something terrible has happened. I think your brother tried to poison me. What? Confusion and concern collided in that single word. Charlotte, what are you talking about? The cake he sent me for my birthday, I think there was something in it. The words sounded insane even as I spoke them. He completely lost it when I told him Amelia took it home instead. Slow down, Logan said, his voice dropping as if stepping away from others. Start from the beginning. As succinctly as possible, I explained the morning's events. The delivery, my suspicions, Amelia's visit, and finally Dylan's terrifying reaction. With each detail, Logan's breathing grew heavier. Are you absolutely sure? He finally asked, his voice hollow. You didn't hear him, Logan. He was screaming. Tears threatened, but I fought them back. I'm in a taxi headed to their place now. Amelia's not answering her phone. A long pause followed. I'm booking the next flight home, he said. Call the police, Charlotte. Right now. And tell them what? That I have a hunch my brother-in-law tried to poison me but might have poisoned his wife instead. Yes, Logan replied firmly. Exactly that. As the taxi neared Brookline, I spotted an ambulance parked outside Dylan and Amelia's modernist townhouse, its lights flashing silently. A stretcher was being wheeled through the front door. They're taking someone out on a stretcher, I told Logan, my voice barely functioning. I'm too late. It's not your fault, Logan insisted. None of this is your fault. But as I watched paramedics loading what could only be Amelia's motionless form into the ambulance, guilt crushed me with the weight of a mountain. I had handed her that cake. I had sent her home with it. Whatever Dylan had intended for me, I had redirected onto an innocent woman. I have to go, I whispered to Logan. The ambulance is leaving. As I paid the driver with shaking hands, I spotted Dylan emerging from the house, his face ashen, following the stretcher. Our eyes met across the driveway. In that moment I saw something shift in his expression. Shock giving way to a hatred so pure it momentarily paralyzed me. What had once been obsession had transformed into something far more dangerous. I had survived his first attempt, but the look in his eyes told me this was far from over. I followed the ambulance to Massachusetts General Hospital, my Uber driver mercifully silent as I stared out the window, numb with shock. The emergency entrance bustled with controlled chaos as paramedics rushed Amelia's stretcher through automated doors. Dylan trailed behind, wild-eyed and disheveled, a far cry from his typically immaculate appearance. For a moment I hesitated on the sidewalk. Should I go in? Was my presence a help or a cruel reminder of what had happened? Before I could decide, a police officer approached Dylan, notebook in hand. Their conversation appeared tense, Dylan's gestures increasingly agitated. When he spotted me, his expression contorted with such hatred that I instinctively stepped back. "You," he snarled, lunging toward me before the officer caught his arm. "This is your fault." The officer held him firmly. "Sir, I need you to calm down. She poisoned my wife." Dylan shouted, drawing stares from everyone within earshot. "She gave her that cake on purpose." The accusation hit like a physical blow. "That's not true," I protested, my voice barely audible. "The cake was from you." The officer glanced between us, clearly trying to make sense of the situation. "Ma'am, are you involved in this incident?" Before I could answer, a hospital security guard approached. "You need to take this inside," he said firmly. "You're disturbing patients and families." We were escorted to a small waiting room where 2 detectives were already waiting. The next hour passed in a blur of questions, accusations, and Dylan's increasingly unhinged behavior. I explained everything: the delivery, the note, my suspicions, Amelia's visit, and Dylan's damning phone call. "Check my phone records," I urged them. The call came at 1:23 p.m. He was screaming when I told him Amelia had taken the cake. One detective left to verify my statement while the other continued questioning Dylan, whose story kept changing. First, he insisted I had poisoned the cake out of jealousy. Then he claimed it was all a misunderstanding. The cake was perfectly fine, and Amelia must have had an allergic reaction. "If the cake is fine, why were you screaming on the phone?" I challenged him. "Why did you rush her to the hospital?" His eyes darted around the room like a cornered animal's. "You don't understand," he muttered. "It wasn't supposed to be her. It was never supposed to be her." The detective leaned forward. "Who was it supposed to be, Mr. Mitchell?" The question hung in the air unanswered as a doctor entered the room. "Mr. Mitchell? Your wife is stabilized, but it was close. We've detected significant levels of oleander in her system." "Oleander?" The detective scribbled in his notebook. "A highly toxic plant," the doctor explained. "All parts contain cardiac glycosides that can cause severe poisoning. She ingested enough to be lethal without immediate treatment." Dylan collapsed into a chair, head in his hands. "I didn't mean for her to eat it," he whispered. "It was just supposed to make Charlotte sick. Just sick enough that Logan would have to come home, see how she needed him, how I could take care of her better than he ever could." His confession silenced the room. The detective signaled his partner, who stepped forward with handcuffs. "Dylan Mitchell, you're under arrest for attempted murder. You have the right to remain silent." As they led him away, Dylan looked back at me, the hatred in his eyes now mixed with something like bewilderment. "I loved you," he said, as if that explained everything. "I would have loved you better than he ever could." Hours later, Logan found me still sitting in that sterile waiting room, staring at nothing. His face was haggard from worry and the rushed flight home. Without a word, he pulled me into his arms, and only then did I finally break down, sobbing against his chest. "I should have known," he kept saying. "All these years, I should have seen what he was capable of." "None of us saw it," I whispered. "Not even Amelia. We were allowed to see her briefly that evening. She lay pale against the hospital sheets, a tangle of 4 lines connecting her to machines that beeped steadily, monitoring her vital signs. Her eyes fluttered open when we approached. "Charlotte." Her voice was barely audible. "They told me what happened. About the cake." I took her hand gently. "I'm so sorry. I never should have." "You didn't know," she interrupted weakly. "Neither of us knew what he was capable of." The doctors explained that Amelia would recover, though slowly. The poison had damaged her heart, requiring monitoring for months to come. Her career at the research lab would need to be put on hold during her recovery. "What happens now?" I asked Logan that night as we sat in our kitchen, the space forever altered by the morning's events. Dylan will face charges, he said, his voice hollow. Attempted murder maybe twice over since he intended it for you. His lawyer is already talking about diminished capacity, obsession as mental illness. The weeks that followed blurred together in a haze of police statements, preliminary hearings, and family fallout. Logan's parents couldn't reconcile the son they thought they knew with the man who had tried to murder his sister-in-law out of twisted obsession. They aged visibly with each court appearance. Amelia filed for divorce from her hospital bed. I ignored so many warning signs, she confided during one of my visits. The controlling behavior, the jealousy whenever your name came up, how he'd check my phone. I told myself it was normal. Media coverage was mercifully brief. Wealthy man poisons cake intended for sister-in-law, accidentally harms wife instead. A week of headlines then replaced by the next tragedy. Logan and I attended therapy, working through the betrayal and guilt that threatened to consume us both. You didn't create his obsession, our therapist reminded me repeatedly. You're not responsible for his actions. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn afternoon, I visited Amelia in her new apartment across town. She'd recovered enough to return to work part-time and was slowly rebuilding her life. We sat on her small balcony, watching leaves spiral down from maple trees lining the street. I got a letter from Dylan, she said suddenly. He's still awaiting trial, but the psychiatric evaluation confirmed what we already knew. His obsession with you warped everything. I set down my tea, unsure how to respond. You know the strangest part, she continued. He still doesn't understand what he did wrong. In his mind it was a love story. You rejecting him for Logan, him waiting all these years for another chance. She shook her head. He never once mentions me in the letter. 7 years of marriage and I was just collateral damage. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across her small balcony, I thought about how Dylan's fixation had nearly destroyed 3 lives. Mine, Logan's, and most tragically Amelia's. The woman sitting across from me had committed no crime except falling in love with the wrong man, yet she'd paid the highest price for his obsession. We can't always see the darkness in the people closest to us, Amelia said softly as if reading my thoughts. Sometimes love is the most effective blindfold. Her words stayed with me long after I left, a chilling reminder that sometimes the most dangerous threats aren't strangers lurking in shadows, but the familiar faces we've learned to trust. And that obsession, when disguised as love, can be the most destructive force of all.